Our theme tonight is the reincarnation of souls. Why should we be interested in reincarnation? Isn't one lifetime sufficient to worry about? In one sense, it is good to think that we live only once. And if it is so, we must not waste our time, but live every minute grandly and beautifully in a spiritual way. It is true that no individual has been born on earth twice as the same person. This is according to God's wishes, and since the beginning of time, He has not changed His policy. Shakespeare wrote of the undiscovered country from whose bourne divided by no traveller returns. Once the hand of fate writes that you must depart, the decree is final and you are gone. And there is the end of your present form. So in that sense there is no return, because regardless of your identity in your previous incarnation, you start this life anew with no recollection of who you were before. Because of that limitation on our consciousness, we see this life as the beginning and the end. It may seem to you that I am teaching a philosophy contrary to that of the Hindus, but I am dealing with truth from the relative standpoint of God's creation. I read from the book of God, and from that library I speak to you. This is the way I learned from my Guru Swami Sri Yukteswar, and the way he learned from his master Lahiri Mahashaya. Without direct perception, you can't really know at all if something is true. Again, relatively speaking, if we incarnate only once, then we see in nature a devastating iconoclastic method. Some babies are stillborn or die after only a little while without having had a chance to experience life. People of all ages are stricken with suffering, disease, and death. There is no certainty about life. Every year when new models of cars come out, there are always some that are lemons having mechanical defects. Is life like this too? That somehow in the process of nature, some souls are made with firm, sound bodies and minds, and others are accidentally given weak bodies and defective brains? Are we just factory productions with no control over what happens to us? If this life is the beginning and the end, then I say it is a terrible injustice. It is ruthless. We don't want to think of a God who would create such a life. This world would just be God's great zoo, with us as merely experimental animals, His human guinea pigs. If God deliberately made specimens with great talent and others with poor mentality, some beautiful and others deformed, then there is no justice and no use in religion. And if this is the only life with no existence hereafter, then there is no point in making any effort beyond satisfying our selfish whims of the moment. God did not give us reason only to question but never be satisfied. The very fact that we can question shows that there are certain processes of evolution going on that enable us to gain greater and greater knowledge. We may not fully understand, but we instinctively know this much. There must be some justice in the law that creates the infinite differences among human beings. Is there any clue? We find it in the law of reincarnation, with its corollary of karma, the principle of cause and effect. God at some time started all souls in a fairly uniform way. We all had equal goodness and potential within us, but owing to the misuse of our intelligence and free will, we have created terrible disorder and lack of equality, lack of uniformity in life. You can't generalize about people, because God has given every individual freedom to make his own choices. No matter who we are or what we are, and even though we are somewhat bound by circumstances of our karma, the effects of our past actions, we can do anything we want to in our minds. In the vault of the mind, all the chains of bondage, as well as the keys to freedom, all actions originate in the mind. Trouble comes because people have so many crazy thoughts, and wrong thoughts lead to wrong actions. In this country, everyone wants to be or to have something different from everyone else. People do whatever comes into their minds. They get married and divorced as often as they wish. They do just as they please, without any thought for their fellow beings or even for their own highest welfare. We stagger at the wild way the world is moving, so many different ideals held by so many millions of people contradicting and conflicting with one another. One person or group wants one thing and another person or group wants the opposite. There are so many customs to bind us, so many philosophies to confuse us. I often say that we are all a little bit crazy and we don't know it, because people of the same craziness mix with their own kind. It is only when people differently crazy come together that they find out their own craziness. God wants to make something beautiful out of this earth. But there are lots of things that have gone out of control because we have misused the freedom He gave us. It is we who have made a mess of this world. And it is we, through opportunities in this life and in new incarnations, who must better our own lot as well as that of the world we live in. We are so identified with this present life and its travails that it seems to us we are mortal, but only the body is mortal. Our real self, the soul, is immortal. We may sleep for a little while in that change called death, but we can never be destroyed. We exist, and that existence is eternal. The wave comes to the shore and then goes back to the sea. It is not lost. It becomes one with the ocean or returns again in the form of another wave. This body has come and it will vanish, but the soul essence within it will never cease to exist. Nothing can terminate that eternal consciousness. To know firsthand about reincarnation, you would have to have a continuity of consciousness during the transition period of death, the after-death state, and the prenatal state in the mother's womb from one incarnation to the next. It is possible. I have experienced that. In my autobiography, that is .com-ing out, you will read how I felt when I was born, that helplessness of being confined in an infant's body. For my soul was developed and awake even when I was in my mother's womb. My soul rebelled against the limitations. When the memory of the past comes, while the soul is still closeted in a helpless body in the womb, the soul feels very frustrated. Those memories cause the baby to move around with life. It wants to get out. The soul feels powerless in that confinement, remembering breath, yet unable to breathe. It struggles to be freed from the prison of the mother's body. When the baby is about to be born, an intense prayer thought goes out from that soul. That is why some infants are born with hands folded as in prayer. But as soon as the child is born, it forgets its past. Only if the consciousness is highly developed will memories of the past be retained. For instance, if you take a person from one house to another, he remembers it because he was conscious during that transition. He may very well remember not only the different houses he went to, but also the route. But suppose an Eskimo in Alaska sustains a head injury that causes unconsciousness and amnesia and is put on a train and brought to Los Angeles for treatment. When he awakens, if asked whence he came, his reply would be, "I don't remember." Also, under the spell of hypnosis, you can be made to feel like a different personality so that you don't remember your real name. At death, a state of coma comes in which you forget everything. But do you forget everything? That is the question. Your mind may not remember, but your soul does. When you are highly advanced spiritually, your soul remains awake and conscious from one life to another.